You were a U.S. attorney in Arizona. So when you first heard about ATF's Operation Fast and Furious that was run out of Phoenix, what was your reaction?
Well, my reaction as I got into it is that it was obviously an operation that was poorly conceived and even worse in its implementation. You don't put deadly arsenal of weapons in the hands of people that you're not going to take control of, especially when you know that the ultimate destination is for the drug cartel in Mexico.
Mm-hmm. I mean, even when you heard agents testifying, like Agent Fortrelli, he was talking about, he was scratching his head the whole time because he said, if the gun went to Mexico, the case was dead. So how did they ever expect to track these guns and trace them into Mexico?
Well, I've heard, and I haven't seen the reports, but I heard the idea was to somehow put some kind of a tracing device in the gun. The problem is that the battery life on something like that is challenging, and it's not going to work. And you're absolutely right. The problem is you don't know within the Mexican government who can be trusted or not, and I think ATF agents on the American side were leery of the investigative personnel on the Mexico side and didn't bother to tell them. And here these arsenal of weapons were getting into the very worst hands possible. And my fear is that we're not even scratching the tip of the iceberg. I think that a lot of the mass killings taking place in Mexico someday will be traced back to some of these weapons.
Yep. Ken Melson, the acting director of ATF, he testified that he wanted to cooperate earlier on, but the DOJ said no because they wanted to protect the administration and political appointees. Considering your experience, when you look at this whole thing, how far up the chain do you think this had to go to be approved?
I have no doubt that it would have to go to the very top. When you have an operation of this magnitude dealing with the type of weaponry that was involved in the operation and the scale of it, it is impossible that program would be conceived at the local level. A lot of people have tried to point their finger at the U.S. Attorney of Arizona. That would be making him a scapegoat. It goes back to in my opinion, the highest levels of the national government.
And when you say the highest levels, are you talking about Attorney General Eric Holder? Because he's insistent, he did not authorize this. But I've always said there's a whole big difference between authorizing and knowing about it.
I would agree. If he didn't know or appreciate the operation, and that's the truth, then whoever was responsible for reporting to him should have their job on the line. You don't run an operation of this magnitude without people at the very top knowing it and signing off on it. The thing that blows me away on the operation is I can't imagine this type of an operation getting approval. There's just too many capable people involved in the upper echelons of ATF and the Attorney General's office to let something like this go through.
And another thing that was so interesting during the testimony of some of these agents is they talked about proffers. Just so people know, what is a proffer?
Well, typically a proffer, when you're negotiating a case with the government, another word they give to them is free talks, where you'll go in and you'll indicate to the government what it is that your client can provide to them that will be helpful to them.
As far as a suspect goes, you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, because what they were saying is that the U.S. Attorney's Office in Phoenix did not do proffers, and I remember the reaction from Congressman Gowdy. He was like, you got to be kidding me. And they said, it was so important to do because if you're going to start, if your goal is to take down a major cartel, you got to start somewhere, and you got to start with these straw purchasers. The fact that they didn't use proffers, again, you being in the line of work you're doing, your reaction.
Well, I'd be surprised if they didn't use proffers. That is a procedure that's used all the time. You get somebody that's under investigation, and with the magnitude of the federal sentencing guidelines, oftentimes you'll want to get in and to lessen the impact on your client. So you'll go in and explain to them what you do know, what he does know, and how he can assist them.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things, as you said, that went wrong with this. And another one was when Fox News is reporting that there was a case that the ATF and the U.S. attorney claimed they dismantled a major weapons trafficking organization from the top to the bottom. Turns out only one of the 20 suspects they arrested is still in jail.
Yeah, there can be a number of reasons for that, but my speculation was when I was interviewed by Fox News that a lot of these straw buyers are probably involved with agreements with the government to cooperate, or they may have been informants for other agencies.
Well, and that's what we're finding about the FBI. That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah, and if the ATF is suddenly announcing they've got a case against your informant who's working for the FBI, that's the last thing you're going to want to happen with the FBI, because they've got a duty to step up, and if the FBI was directing to do these things, then it's wrong to prosecute the straw buyer.
Yeah, and I mean, you just look at this whole thing and all these agents. I mean, is this really how you take down a major cartel?
Well, one of the examples I've thought of is if you're wanting to find out somebody who might be involved with trying to manufacture nuclear weapons, you don't provide enriched uranium to a straw buyer to see if you can follow the enriched uranium to the manufacture of the bomb, because what you're doing is you're creating such a potential for utter destruction when you're putting AK-47s in the hand of people that are sociopaths in Mexico that will kill 20 people and not bat an eye. That is deadly, and I think it's exposing our government to immense liability by arming people that should never have these weapons.
Yeah. When you were a U.S. attorney in Arizona, what was your dealings like with the ATF?
We've always had a great relationship. I thought that they were really sharp guys. We would work with IRS, DEA, ATF, and back when I was U.S. attorney during the first term of Reagan's administration, that's when we implemented the law enforcement coordination committees, where we would get the different agencies together and talk. One of my concerns with this operation is I fear that maybe the FBI was not made privy to what ATF was doing, and as a consequence, they may well have been stumbling over each other.
Yeah, and I think the ATF will tell you it's the other way around. They had no idea. They were never told. But if it's obvious, the right hand didn't know what the left hand was doing. It's just, I was talking to one agent, Vince Cefalu, and I don't know if you want to weigh in on this, but he was fired over this because he was one of the whistleblowers, and he was talking about how this is really a mission about trying to make the numbers work for the ATF, because the 90% claim that they made, the 90% of the guns are coming from the U.S., it didn't play out. We exposed it for what it was, which was a myth. And then you had the Inspector General saying that the ATF wasn't doing enough to stop the flow of guns from the U.S. to Mexico. Do you think this was more about trying to make the numbers work for them?
Well, I don't know what the motives might have been. I always start with the assumption that they're wanting to do the right thing and that they're wanting to stop or dismantle the drug cartels. The problem I see, it comes with the operational plan. It is inconceivable to me that you're going to let these weapons get on the other side of the border and you're not going to shut it down when you have the opportunity. The minute you start letting that kind of weaponry go into Mexico, where oftentimes you don't know whether the person wearing the badge is working for the government or whether he's being paid by the cartel, there's just no way to control the operation in Mexico. And even worse, let's suppose you trace a gun to one of the cartel members. So what? You don't have jurisdiction in the United States to bring him back. It's going to require somebody in the Mexican government apprehending him and then agreeing to send that individual to the United States. And I think the Mexican government is fighting many of the cartels and doing their best. It's just a plan that is so utterly flawed from the outset that it's frightening that it could get to this extent.